Hey everyone, our story begins with a world almost completely swallowed by the sea. Humanity survives on scattered islands and boats while enormous creatures rule the water beneath them. On one small fishing boat, a boy named Boda lives with his father and younger sister, Rita. Their entire home drifts across a calm but unforgiving ocean. Their father is the center of that fragile family. He reassures both children that he will protect them, turning an ordinary moment aboard the boat into a promise Boda trusts completely. To keep them alive, their father dives into submerged ruins and salvages anything useful from the old world. Every trip below the surface means entering territory where humans are no longer dominant. Boda helps from above as the boat's crane raises a basket of salvage. The routine looks practiced, revealing how carefully this family has adapted its daily life to the flooded world. As evening settles over the water, the boat becomes a tiny refuge beneath the orange sky. Darkness is dangerous here, so the family prepares to spend another cautious night together. When something outside draws Boda's attention, his father immediately pushes him below deck. The sudden urgency makes one rule unmistakable: when danger appears, the children hide and obey. By morning, their home already looks battered and overcrowded with gear, but the three of them are still together. Survival is uncomfortable, improvised, and completely dependent on the boat staying afloat. Boda wants to investigate the nearby ruins, but his father stops him. Curiosity cannot outweigh caution when a single mistake can expose both children to whatever is hiding in the sea. Rita then notices birds circling a tall ruin rising above the water. Their presence suggests solid ground and possible supplies, giving the family a reason to approach despite the obvious risk. Inside, their father finds a human skeleton. The discovery proves that other survivors once reached this place, but it also warns him that the tower did not keep them alive. He also uncovers a case of high explosives. The bombs are valuable enough to take, but their presence beside twisted metal and abandoned remains makes the ruin feel more like a warning than shelter. That warning arrives too late. A towering skeletal leviathan rises beside the boat, its pale body and enormous jaws dwarfing the family's home before any of them can escape. The monster lunges and clamps its jaws around the vessel. In a single attack, the safe world Boda has always known is crushed between teeth larger than the people aboard it. With the boat collapsing, Boda's father throws himself between the creature and his children. His promise to protect them is no longer comforting words. It becomes the family's only chance to survive. The Leviathan's jaws close around the boat, crushing wood and metal together. Boda, Rita, and their father are thrown into a chaos of splintering debris and churning water. A whipping appendage tears through what remains and smashes into the nearby tower. The family cannot fight the force directly. Their only hope is to reach the ruin before the sea takes them. The battered tower becomes their only patch of solid ground. Around it, pieces of the boat drift away, leaving the family stranded with no vessel and nowhere else to run. Their father reaches the ruin carrying both children. Even though a long spike has pierced his body, Rita is unconscious, and Boda can only cling to him while blood runs down his armor. He pulls the spike from his abdomen and forces himself upright. The injury is severe, but he refuses to collapse while the creature is still close enough to reach his children. He orders Boda to take Rita and run deeper into the ruins. Our protagonist, Boda, obeys, lifting his unconscious sister, even though he is terrified and barely understands where safety might be. The path closes around them as multiple tongue-like limbs rise from every side. Boda is no fighter, and with Rita in his arms, even one direct hit could end both of them. He keeps moving as the limbs strike the stone behind him. Each impact lands close enough to throw debris into the air, but Boda refuses to drop his sister or stop running. Then their father emerges through smoke and dust. Despite the hole through his body, he has followed them, placing himself back between the pursuing monster and his children. Before he can reach them, one appendage snatches Boda and suspends him above the Leviathan's open mouth. Rita is left below while Boda hangs helplessly over rows of teeth. His father attacks before the jaws can close, cutting through the gripping limbs in one sweeping strike. The severed appendages release Boda, turning a fatal fall into a narrow rescue. He catches Boda and lands with him safely in his arms. For one brief second, the rescue restores the promise that their father can always reach them in time. But the Leviathan still towers directly in front of them, filling the ruined passage. Wounded and trapped, their father now has to face it, while Boda watches from only a few steps away. Boda and his father stand directly before the Leviathan, with the ruined tower behind them and no boat left to escape on. The wounded man chooses to fight here. He orders Boda to hide behind the rocks and protect Rita. Boda retreats, but he understands that if his father loses, there will be nobody left to shield either child. Dragging his oversized blade across the stone, their father charges first. He cannot afford a defensive battle, so he closes the distance before the Leviathan can strike the children again. He vaults onto the creature's body and climbs above its snapping jaws. The move puts him within reach of its head, but it also leaves him exposed to every thrashing limb. From above, he drives the blade down with both hands. The weapon pierces the monster, creating the first clear opening Boda has seen since the attack began. He braces a heavy beam across the monster's jaws, forcing its mouth apart and holding it in place. The improvised restraint buys time, but the creature is far from helpless. A tentacle smashes him away and drives his body into the stone. Boda watches blood scatter across the battlefield, but his father still forces himself back to his feet. The next strike finally pierces straight through his abdomen. He remains upright for a moment, but the wound is unmistakably fatal, and Boda can see that his father cannot leave with them. As his strength fades, he remembers holding Boda and Rita when they were small. Protecting them has defined every choice he made, and he refuses to let his last one be different. He tells Boda that he loves him. The words make the goodbye real, leaving the boy frozen between wanting to reach his father and knowing he has been ordered to survive. With his remaining strength, he throws the great sword toward Boda. The weapon that protected the family now becomes the burden and responsibility he leaves to his son. Then he arms one of the salvaged explosives while the Leviathan remains on top of him. He is not trying to escape, he is making sure the creature cannot immediately follow his children. The tower erupts in a massive explosion. Fire and debris swallow both the father and the Leviathan, while the blast throws Boda and Rita away from the center. When the water settles, Boda finds only his father's broken glasses drifting nearby. The small object confirms what the explosion has taken before he is ready to accept it. Alone on the shattered tower with unconscious Rita, our protagonist, Boda, cries out for his father. The rescue is over. From this moment forward, the two children must survive without him. Boda dreams that he is back on the water, watching his father's bloodied body drift beside the boat. Even in sleep, the loss follows him and turns the ocean into a grave. He wakes inside the ruined tower beside Rita. His sister is still alive and sleeping, making Boda the only person left who can take responsibility for both of them. He remembers how completely their father protected them, always treating Boda as a child rather than a replacement parent. That protection is gone, but the example it set remains. Boda hugs Rita and accepts the role he never wanted. He cannot bring their father back, but he can keep his younger sister from facing the same fate. At daylight, he searches the wreckage and salvages a small dinghy along with whatever supplies still float. Every recovered object now matters because the destroyed boat cannot provide for them anymore. Rita asks whether their father is gone like their mother. Boda cannot hide the truth from her, so the siblings cling to each other and grieve the family they have lost. Boda also realizes the Leviathan attacked during daylight. The old schedules and assumptions their father relied on are no longer safe, so waiting for a supposedly harmless hour could get them killed. With the proper fishing gear missing, Boda bends a fork into a crude spear. It is a desperate tool, but improvisation is the only way to turn the tower's scraps into food. He dives beneath the surface carrying the crude weapon. A dark shape passes nearby, reminding him that hunting in this ocean means entering the same water where monsters hunt people. The siblings manage to catch a crab and cook it over a small fire. Rita eats happily, giving Boda his first proof that he can actually provide for her. Food is only one problem. Boda builds a rain-catching system from the materials around them, but the collected water amounts to barely a day's supply. He experiments with bottles to collect evaporated water as well. The simple system is slow, yet it shows Boda learning to stretch every resource instead of waiting for rescue. Searching deeper into their new shelter, Boda and Rita discover a room filled with human corpses. The tower protected these people for a time, but it never became a permanent refuge. One body is already covered in worms and insects. Rita recoils, while Boda has to keep searching through the remains because useful supplies may be the difference between life and death. Among the abandoned belongings, he finds a red fuel container. The discovery adds another usable resource, but it also confirms that the dead survivors had supplies and still failed. Boda then finds another case of high explosives, identical to the weapon his father used. The sight immediately connects their survival supplies to the moment that took his father away. Nearby, a dead family remains locked in an embrace. Boda sees a reflection of himself and Rita in them, and the warning is clear: staying together is not enough unless he finds a way forward. Boda and Rita settle into a harsh routine inside the tower, sleeping near a small fire, and living on whatever Boda can recover. Their shelter is safer than open water, but only barely. Our protagonist, Boda, promises himself that he will protect Rita with the great sword their father left behind. The weapon represents safety, even though Boda has never learned to control it. The first swing proves how unprepared he is. The sword's weight and recoil throw Boda backward, turning the weapon into a danger to its own wielder. He slams into a stone pillar and drops hard. Determination alone cannot replace strength, so Boda puts the blade aside and returns to the tools he can actually use. While tracking crabs through the ruin, he discovers a cellar door and follows them down. The dark staircase suggests water below, but also the possibility of a dependable food source. The basement is flooded and packed with large fish. For the first time since the attack, Boda finds enough visible food to imagine that he and Rita might survive here. Using his forked spear, Boda catches one of the fish and carries it toward the stairs. The successful hunt gives him confidence that his improvised methods can keep Rita fed. Then something pulls the spear from his grasp, and his hand lands on a huge rounded shell. What looked like part of the flooded wall is actually an egg. As he looks around, the entire chamber becomes a nest filled with enormous eggs. Boda has not discovered a pantry, he has swum into the breeding ground of the creatures hunting this sea. Several eggs crack open, and hatchlings spill into the water around him. Their smaller bodies do not make them harmless. They immediately close in on the trapped boy. One hatchling bites into Boda's leg as another grabs his ankle. He kicks free and forces himself upward, leaving blood in the water while the creatures pursue. Boda turns long enough to drive the fork spear into one pursuer's eye. The strike does not end the threat, but it creates the opening he needs to reach the stairs. A much larger claw reaches from the nest and follows him onto the staircase. The eggs are not unguarded, and Boda has drawn an adult creature toward the only exit. Cornered above the water, Boda finally swings his father's sword at the creature. This time fear and necessity help him direct the heavy blade instead of letting it control him. He slams the heavy cellar hatch shut between them. The barrier shakes under the creature's weight, but Boda climbs on top and refuses to let it open. When an eye appears beneath the hatch, Boda drives the sword down through it. He cannot confirm the kill, so he piles rubble over the entrance to keep the nest sealed. Only after burying the hatch does he notice Rita is missing. The tower that seemed small and manageable suddenly becomes another place where his sister can disappear. Boda finds Rita standing at the shoreline, staring across the water instead of hiding. She points toward a distant shape moving upright through the sea. Far from the tower, a human-sized silhouette walks through the water. To the children, it resembles their father, but Boda recognizes the danger. Something from the attack is still alive. At the shattered edge of their island, Boda orders Rita away from the sea. The ruins behind them show how little shelter the siblings have left. Then a human-shaped silhouette appears on the horizon. It is too far away to identify, but it seems to be moving across the water itself. Worse, the Leviathan on the rocks is still breathing. Its body is torn open, yet the creature has enough life left to threaten anyone who comes close. Before Boda can stop her, Rita rows into the surf, convinced their father has returned. Boda can only shout as the small boat slips beyond the broken shore. With daylight vanishing, Boda dives after Rita and refuses to turn back. The current pulls both children farther from the island with every stroke. He reaches Rita just in time and shields her against the tiny remnant of concrete. The next wave crashes over Boda's back while Rita clings to him. A Leviathan slams through the last piece of shelter and cracks the wall apart. The children are exposed again before they can recover from the wave. As the monsters close in, Boda remembers his father, Tian Ma, kneeling between the two children. Their father promised to protect Boda and Rita with his life. With Tian Ma gone, that promise now belongs to Boda. He plants himself in front of Rita and decides to protect her for their father. Boda grabs Rita against his chest and jumps from the crumbling perch. Several Leviathans snap beneath them as both children clear the swarm by inches. The wounded Leviathans suddenly turn on their own pack. They tear apart the dead and injured, filling the water with blood and buying the siblings a narrow opening. The cannibal frenzy buys them only seconds. Boda and Rita row for the nearest ruin while the surviving pack rises behind their tiny boat. Inside the concrete shell, Boda builds a ladder from broken boards and pushes Rita toward the upper ledge. Leviathans climb after them, using the same boards as footholds. Boda destroys the ladder as soon as Rita reaches safety. The monsters pile against the wall below, unable to reach the exhausted children. But the growl above them does not come from the trapped swarm. A giant wounded Leviathan is already inside the refuge, towering over Boda and Rita at arm's length. The refuge is already occupied by a Leviathan big enough to fill the chamber. Boda and Rita stand directly beneath its wounded eyes with nowhere else to climb. The Leviathan lunges first and slams Boda into the floor before he can raise his weapon. Its jaws close around his arm while Rita watches. Rita refuses to hide and smashes the creature with a blood-soaked rock, crying. She orders the monster to let her brother go. The monster turns toward Rita and places its teeth inches from her face. Terrified and crying, she still refuses to abandon Boda. Rita notices the old harpoon still lodged in the creature's wounded eye. She keeps striking the same injury because it is the only weakness she can reach. Boda forces himself back to his feet and draws Tian Ma's harpoon gun. He spins the heavy weapon into position and commits to one desperate shot. The shell detonates inside the concrete ruin and engulfs the Leviathan in fire. The blast is powerful enough to shake the structure around Boda. Boda sees that the shell's delayed charge is still burning beneath them. The first explosion has not finished, and the floor cannot survive another. The second explosion erupts before the monster can recover. Fire tears through the Leviathan and the failing floor together, throwing debris across the chamber. The remaining island collapses and sinks into the ocean. Boda keeps Rita above the surface while their final piece of home disappears behind them. At dusk, our protagonist Boda pulls Rita onto a floating wreck. A dense wall of Leviathans climbs over the deck and surrounds them on every side. Boda jams the harpoon gun across one Leviathan's jaws and uses all his strength to hold them apart. More monsters crowd behind the first. With Rita pressed behind him, Boda orders the swarm to stay back. The blade in his hands is the only barrier between the siblings and the closing teeth. Just before the swarm reaches them, a shot comes from the figure on the horizon. The nearest Leviathan falls before Boda can understand what happened. The stranger is a white-haired harpooner riding over the ocean on a powered board. Twin weapons hang at her sides while two more remain crossed behind her. Her expression never changes as she approaches the swarm. Even the strange red cross patch over one eye does not hide how calmly she studies the battlefield. For the first time in years, Boda and Rita are looking at another human being. Relief and disbelief replace the terror on both children's faces. The silhouette does not sink or slow. It advances over the waves toward the wreck, where Boda and Rita are trapped. As she closes the distance, the stranger resolves into a white-haired woman balanced on a powered board, with enormous weapons crossed behind her. Her expression is calm, almost detached. The red cross over one eye and the weapons on her back mark her as someone built for this ocean. The stranger raises a heavy firearm and opens fire without introducing herself. Her first shot tears straight into the Leviathans crowding the wreck. The rounds pass close enough to make Boda cover Rita, but every impact lands on a monster rather than the children. Looking at the embedded projectiles, Boda recognizes them as harpoons. That means the stranger is a hunter, like the ones his father described. The harpooner accelerates away from the wreck and lets the surviving pack chase her. In seconds, she has pulled most of the danger away from Boda and Rita. The swarm follows as one mass, exactly as she intends. Their attention stays fixed on the lone rider crossing the darkening sea. One creature breaks from the chase and lunges back onto the wreck. Boda sees its open mouth directly behind Rita. Boda strikes its eye and refuses to let go, but the Leviathan whips him off the wreck. He is carried toward open water with the weapon still buried in its flesh. The stranger notices Boda's struggle even while surrounded herself. She pivots on the board and measures the shot without showing panic. She locks fresh ammunition into the weapon and raises it in one smooth motion. Boda is still in the monster's path when she fires. The shot reaches the attacker first. The harpooner stays balanced on the board as the wounded Leviathan collapses behind her, and Boda survives the pull. She surfs directly into the pack, dragging both blades through the water. The weapons curve around her like hooked wings and catch the first Leviathan at full speed. The first blade cuts cleanly through a Leviathan's neck. The harpooner does not stop, because the rest of the swarm is already closing around her. She threads through the pack and splits several monsters in one continuous pass. The sea around her turns red before the creatures can regroup. The harpooner finishes the final sweep beneath a severed Leviathan. One warrior has done what Boda could not imagine. She has torn through the swarm's main cluster alone. She catches the returning weapons with the same calm control, but movement in the bloodied water shows the fight is not finished. The white-haired harpooner catches the returning blades over her head and immediately prepares another pass. The swarm is wounded, but it is not finished yet. She cuts through the next cluster at full speed. Severed bodies and blood rise behind her board while she keeps moving across the surface. A Leviathan lunges from her blind side, but the stranger turns with the blade already passing through its face. The attack never reaches her. From the wreck, Boda keeps Rita low and watches the impossible fight. Neither child has ever seen a human move like this. When the noise fades, the deck is buried beneath Leviathan corpses. Boda carries Rita forward carefully, unsure whether the stranger is another danger. The harpooner drops into the center of the wreck and lands among the bodies. Her controlled arrival is almost quieter than the massacre she has just ended. She wipes Leviathan blood from her face and looks at the children. The stranger seems cautious, but she makes no move to hurt them. The siblings face her across a mound of dead monsters. The scene makes the difference between their strength and hers impossible to ignore. Boda reminds himself that the stranger saved them and may have good intentions. Still, he keeps Rita close while she crosses the bloody water. The stranger explains that in this boundless ocean, finding a harpooner at the moment they needed one is extraordinary luck. Her statement gives Boda a name for what she is. The white-haired harpooner finally introduces herself as Kana, a harpooner of the Union Busan. The organization is real, just as Boda's father said. A dark mass appears against the setting sun, so large that Boda mistakes it for an island. Kana corrects him. The structure is a ship. As it draws closer, decks, cranes, buildings, and lights emerge across the hull. Union Busan is not merely transport, it is a moving city. Boda stares up at a vessel as large as the home he lost. Every level carries signs of machinery, housing, and people. Smaller rescue craft burst from the ship and race toward the wreck. The children are no longer waiting for a miracle. An organized crew has come for them. A blue-haired harpooner named Brune greets Kana from the hatch. His complaint that she was too fast confirms that Kana had backup following behind. Aboard Union Busan, our protagonist Boda holds Rita while staring at the faces around them. The impossible discovery is not the ship. It is the number of living people inside it. He pulls Rita into a tight embrace and repeats the fact that matters most: they survived. For one moment, the fear of the ocean gives way to relief. Beside the ship's immense hull, rescue boats look tiny. Search teams inspect the broken island and every piece of floating wreckage. Kanna orders the crews to check every route and make sure no Leviathan escapes. Her calm from the battle gives way to strict command. Kanna quietly denies killing every creature. Her attention is fixed on a bloodied harpoon sword lying beside the carcasses. The weapon is not ordinary salvage. Its distinctive handle and blade belong to the father Boda and Rita have been waiting for. On the ship, Boda tries to reassure Rita with a smile. For the first time, they are answering questions instead of fighting to stay alive. When the official asks about their parent, Boda finally says it aloud: the Leviathan took him. The grief he delayed during the escape returns all at once. The official identifies himself as Kiho Lee, the man in charge of the refugee department. He promises to take responsibility for Boda and Rita from this point forward. Kiho confirms that harpooners are Union Busan's frontline defenders, immediately connecting the organization to the warriors Tion described. Boda remembers the tattoo on Tion Ma's shoulder. The emblem and the 6 small stars around it were the mark of a harpooner. Kanna carries the same emblem, but only 3 stars surround hers. That difference turns the tattoo into a ranking system rather than a family symbol. Kiho identifies Kanna as a 3-star harpooner. After witnessing her erase a swarm, Boda already understands how much power even 3 stars represent. Kiho says a 6-star harpooner would be a legend. If Boda remembers correctly, Taeyeon Ma belonged to a rank the official can hardly believe existed. Brune wonders whether the sword's owner killed a Kentrasi. Kanna rejects the idea, warning that the so-called 7 devils cannot be hunted by one person. 15 years earlier, a crustacean-type Leviathan attacked a refugee fleet. Its armored body towered over the ship while survivors fired desperately from the deck. The refugees cannot pierce its shell. The ultra crab crushes the vessel and kills everyone caught in its path. Once the creature is full, the massacre is already complete. It devours survivors and leaves the fleet broken across the water. Among the bodies, a young Kanna is still alive. She reaches into the open while the wounded monster searches the wreck. The injured ultra crab rises directly in front of her. Kanna has nowhere to run and no one left to protect her. Blood and limbs close around the child as she shields her eye. The memory ends before revealing how Kanna escapes that impossible scene. After Kiho Lee's initial intake interview, he escorts Boda and Rita deeper into Union Busan. Their small boat carries the exhausted children toward humanity's immense floating stronghold. Once aboard, the newcomers receive clean clothes and are led into the ship's interior. For children raised around rust, wreckage, and seawater, even these ordinary supplies feel unfamiliar. The deeper they travel, the more Union Busan resembles a living city. Salvagers repair old machinery, merchants display recovered goods, and crowds barter over everything the sea has not destroyed. A forgotten bottle of whiskey becomes their first lesson in this economy. The adults value it enough to trade for sturdy boots, turning one piece of old-world refuse into something the children desperately need. Their assigned room is tiny by the city's standards, yet it contains a luxury Boda, and Rita can barely process a real bed. To them, this narrow space already feels almost extravagant. That night, they look beyond the metal walls and discover a sky crowded with stars. Kiho explains what they are, giving the exhausted children one peaceful moment inside their new home. Elsewhere, Union Busan's crews haul in the monstrous corpse recovered near the refugees. Its arrival turns the children's rescue into a far more dangerous question, because this is no ordinary sea beast. Researchers identify the body as Kentrasi, one of the great leviathans. A creature at that level should not have fallen so easily, which means someone terrifyingly capable must have killed it. Their evidence points toward Taeyeon Ma, the legendary 6-star harpooner. If he truly brought down Kentrasi, then the dead monster and the rescued children are tied to the same missing man. Kanna, meanwhile, brings the recovered weapon to the doctor, Sting. She is not asking about a random piece of salvage. She wants confirmation of the suspicion already forming in her mind. The answer is unmistakable. Kanna is holding the Sword of Massacre, the signature weapon of Taeyeon Ma himself. That makes Boda and Rita more than ordinary refugees, and turns their arrival into a warning. Looking at the blade, Kanna realizes that Taeyeon's past has finally reached Union Busan. Whatever follows will not be a quiet family reunion. In her mind, the city is standing on the edge of a bloodbath. Alone beneath the night sky, Kanna considers what Kentrasi's death really means. If Taeyeon killed a great Leviathan, she believes he must have been protecting someone important enough to risk everything. A small snow globe pulls her backward into her own childhood. Long before she became the woman standing here, young Kanna lived aboard a refugee salvage ship with her mother and father. Their home was assembled from whatever the sea surrendered. Every wall, tool, and meal depended on salvage, while the recognized citizens of Union Busan treated people like Kanna as if they barely existed. Young Kanna still dreamed of citizenship, a permanent home, and a life where her family no longer risked the water each day. the snow globe became a tiny picture of that impossible stability. One expedition takes the family into the flooded remains of Matsuda Heavy Industries. The ruins are dangerous, but a valuable relic from the old world could buy the citizenship they have chased for years. Against the odds, the crew recovers a major Matsuda relic. The heavy machine rises from the water intact enough to sell, and for once, Kana's parents can see a path out of refugee life. They celebrate as though their future has already changed. To young Kana, the relic is not metal. It is a home, legal recognition, and proof that her parents' sacrifices might finally matter. Then the sea answers their hope with violence. A leviathan attacks before the celebration can end, its tentacles tearing through the fragile vessel and scattering the unprepared refugees. Kana's mother is seized before anyone can pull her free. Young Kana watches helplessly as the creature takes her, turning a family's best day into a loss the child will never forget. Her father reaches the radio and begs Union Busan for immediate rescue. The city can hear them, but the response is cold. The refugees are outside its protection and no rescue team is coming. With official help denied, the survivors trigger their emergency signal and send a desperate flare across the water. It is a final plea aimed at anyone close enough to notice. Someone does notice. Fishing alone on a slab of broken concrete, Tian-ma turns toward the refugees' signal. Union Busan has abandoned them, but its strongest harpooner is already looking their way. The distress flare reaches Tian-ma while he is fishing alone among the ruins. He has no crew beside him and no reason to expect a battle, yet the signal immediately draws his attention. By the time Tian looks over, the refugee ship is already breaking apart. The survivors repeat their call to Union Busan while the creature circles close enough to strike again. The city's answer does not change. Because the people aboard are unregistered refugees, Union Busan refuses to risk its personnel. The decision leaves Kana's family alone with the monster. Kana's father moves to shield her, but the Leviathan catches him first. She reaches toward him as the creature closes its jaws, losing her last parent before help can arrive. A harpoon cuts through the attack before Kana becomes the next victim. Tian has crossed the water alone, and his first strike kills the creature that Union Busan would not face. Standing between the survivors and the sea, he gives them his name, Tian-ma, a harpooner from Union Busan. The refugees recognize both the man and the sword of massacre in his hand. But the creature he killed was only the immediate threat. Beyond it waits a great leviathan, a colossal armored beast whose shell dwarfs both Tian and the refugee vessel. Tian orders the helmsman to take everyone away, then releases the lifeboat so the damaged ship can escape. He is deliberately separating the civilians from the fight and leaving himself behind. His opening blow lands directly on the armored shell. The impact is tremendous, but the creature's defense absorbs it, forcing Tian to measure just how much power the blade will need. Tian calmly increases the Sword of Massacre's output. He has learned that a normal attack will not penetrate, so every following strike must be stronger, faster, and aimed at the same weakness. The monster's size does not shake him. Tian declares that he will smash through it, not because victory is guaranteed, but because the refugees behind him need the beast stopped now. His repeated blows begin to work. Cracks spread across the armor where Tian has concentrated his attacks, proving that even this great leviathan can be wounded by one relentless harpooner. Tian stays close to the armored giant, circling faster than its claws can track him. Each pass drives another slash into the damaged section instead of wasting strength across the entire shell. The Sword of Massacre consumes compressed gas to release its full force. Tian loads another cartridge mid-battle, accepting that breaking this armor will drain his limited supply quickly. Unable to catch Tian cleanly, the Leviathan changes targets. It grips the refugee's vessel in its massive jaws and armor, using the helpless ship to force its hunter away. With one violent motion, the creature hurls the entire ship into the air. The survivors who just escaped one Leviathan are now trapped inside a falling wreck. Tian abandons his attack and moves beneath the wreck, catching its descent before it crushes the refugees. Saving them costs him the opening he created against the monster. Once the wreck settles, Tian puts himself between the Leviathan and the survivors again. The battle is no longer only about piercing armor. Every mistake can now kill the people behind him. The creature answers by launching a storm of hardened spikes. Tian cannot dodge without exposing the refugees, so he stays in their path and tries to cut down as many as possible. Some projectiles break through. The refugees are struck despite Tian's defense, and the distraction gives the Leviathan the chance it needs to injure him and disrupt his grip on the sword. The Sword of Massacre slips from Tian's hand. Wounded, running low on gas, and stripped of the weapon that made him famous, he still refuses to leave the civilians behind. Tian turns the empty hardware into a weapon. Gripping the metal cylinder in both hands, he hammers it into the weakened armor and keeps rotating against the crack he already made. The desperate attack leaves the Leviathan cracked and bleeding, but Tian has exhausted his cartridges and nearly all his strength. For a moment, neither side can finish the other. Then the great Leviathan makes an unexpected choice. Rather than continue the battle, it turns away from Tian, throws itself back into the sea, and disappears beneath the water. The armored Leviathan continues its retreat without looking back. Tion does not celebrate, because he did not kill it. The creature simply decided that continuing the fight was no longer worth the damage. Young Kana asks whether he killed it. Tion answers honestly, no, he drove it away, but he cannot promise that the same Leviathan will never return. The sunrise brings Kana no relief. Her mother and father were both taken before her eyes, leaving her the only member of the family to see mourning. Tion can offer only a quiet hand on her head. Union Busan finally arrives after the danger has passed. Its officials take control of the Matsuda relic and process Kana through a contract, converting the refugees' discovery into property the city can claim. Because she is the sole survivor, young Kana receives the citizenship her family wanted. The congratulations ring hollow. The city recognizes her only after everyone who fought for that future is dead. Inside Union Busan, harpooners ask Kana for the story. She tells them the central truth in one word. The city declined their rescue call while her family was still alive. The men laugh instead of listening. When Kana refuses to withdraw the accusation, one harpooner turns the city's hierarchy against her, treating a powerless refugee child as someone he can punish freely. Tion arrives before they can go further. The same man who faced a great Leviathan now turns on his own colleagues, making it clear that their rank will not protect them from him. He defeats the bully without difficulty, then condemns the way Union Busan's fighters treat the people beside them. Strength, Tion insists, is supposed to protect teammates, not provide permission to crush them. Before leaving, Tion removes the ringleader from his place and identifies Kana as a fellow harpooner under his protection. With one declaration, the unwanted refugee gains an ally no one can ignore. Tion then asks young Kana to become his pupil. He sees talent in her, but warns that talent alone means nothing unless she commits herself completely to surviving this world. Kana accepts even if the training kills her. After watching the weak be ignored and devoured, she no longer wants safety granted by someone else. She wants the strength to seize it herself. The memory returns Kana to the present, with Tion's sword of massacre in her hands. To Kana, Boda and Rita's arrival feels like a final message from her old teacher. His children have reached the pupil who owes him everything. Alright everyone, that's it for today. See you next time.